Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. My daughter slapped her phone down on the table. I am Ryan, 39 years old and not ready. Her jaw was clenched so tight I heard it click. She kept staring at me like I had already betrayed her. I knew this was not about the haircut, yet it was. Dad, I want to shave my head today. No hello and no build-up, just that shot straight to the chest. She pushed the screen toward me with both hands shaking. On the display, there was a girl with a buzz cut and piercings. My daughter did not look like that girl, but she wanted to. I tried to joke because that is my first stupid reflex. You know, clippers are permanent, not like a filter. She did not laugh or blink, she just waited. Her eyes were red around the edges like she had argued already. I suddenly felt very late to a conversation I had missed. You promised you would listen next time I asked something big. Her voice cracked a little and she cleared her throat hard. She dragged the phone back and hugged it to her chest. I have thought about this for months, I am serious. The way she said months made my stomach twist under my ribs. Here is the part where I wish I paused and breathed. I could have told her to wait a week and think. I could have said we should talk to her mom first. Instead, I heard myself say, why now, what happened? The second the word mom left my mouth, she flinched. She said it is ridiculous and that nobody will hire me. My daughter wiped her nose with the back of her hand. She said only crazy people do this and that I want attention. Her leg bounced under the chair so fast it rattled the floor. She watched me like I held the last match in a dark room. I want to be very honest about my ego here. Part of me heard her words and thought about control. My ex tells our kid no, I get to be the yes. That is the ugly part, the part I hate admitting now. Back then it felt like standing up for her, not showing off. Do you like the idea, or is this about school? I asked it slower that time, trying to sound more adult. Her shoulders sagged like someone finally touched the real bruise. Both, I guess, and I am so tired of people deciding for me. The last line came out almost whispered, yet it rang the loudest. She set the phone flat and tapped the picture 3 times. Every time I see this, I feel like I am looking at me. That sentence hit harder than any teenage eye roll ever could. It was not a phase voice, it was a plea. I realized no one had treated her like she meant it. I checked the time out of habit and felt stupid. Like there is a schedule for moments that rewrite your family. If we do this, you know people will talk, right? She nodded, almost eager, like gossip was already familiar. I know they already talk, at least this would be my choice. That line hooked me hard because I grew up voiceless. This is where hindsight screams at me from across the room. In that second I was not calm, I was triggered. I saw my own teenage years like a cheap replay and reacted. I told myself I was different, I listened and defended my kid. Your mom will be furious about this. I said it flat with no drama, just the simple ugly truth. Her mouth curled into this bitter half-smile that hurt to see. She is already furious, this would just give her a new topic. That answer should have slowed me down, instead it sped me up. I opened a search tab for a barbershop without overthinking. My hands moved faster than my doubts, and that scares me now. There is a place that takes walk-ins, we can try that. Her chair screeched back as she jumped to her feet. She grabbed her hoodie and shoes like she expected me to change. On the drive, she kept touching her hair in short, nervous bursts. Not petting it, more like saying goodbye piece by piece. Are you sure you want all of it gone? She nodded and stared ahead, lips pressed tight like a promise. If I hate it, I will live. If I never try, I will hate that more. I remember that answer word for word because it sounded grown. Too grown for someone who still leaves dishes in her room. I felt this weird mix of admiration and fear ball in my chest. I wanted to slam on the brakes and hug her until next year. Instead, I merged onto traffic and pretended this was totally normal. When we parked, she did not move right away, neither did I. The engine ticked down and the silence filled every crack. If you say no now, I will still love you, you know that, right? Her voice was soft, but there was steel under it. That was the moment I knew no answer would be simple. I wish I could tell you I thought through every angle. Future job interviews and school pictures and the custody agreement language. I thought about none of that in any real way. All I saw was my kid asking me to trust her judgment. So I nodded and opened the door before I could back out. Inside the shop, she walked ahead of me like she owned it. She showed the photo to the barber with this fierce little chin lift. Can you make it like this, shorter on the sides even? He glanced at me over the mirror, eyebrows raised in silent question. My signature on that consent form might as well have been a fuse. He asked her one more time if she felt completely certain. She rolled her eyes and gripped the armrests like a launch seat. I saw my reflection behind her and barely recognized that guy. He looked like a man trying hard to appear calm for his kid. Underneath, I was already hearing the future fight in my ex's voice. The clippers roared to life and my throat tightened on instinct. First passed down the middle and hair slid away in chunks. Her eyes widened, then she started to grin, wide and wild. I laughed once, nervous like I was watching a stunt. Somewhere under that buzz I knew there would be a price. She hopped off the chair and scrubbed her scalp hard. Tiny hairs dropped from the cape and stuck to her sneakers. She caught my eye in the mirror and smirked like a dare. In my head, alarms were already blaring. I still nodded. I paid, trying not to picture her mother hearing about this. Outside, she yanked the cape off and shook herself hard. Her palm went straight to her head and moved in quick circles. She started laughing, short bursts at first, then louder. People glanced over as they passed. I felt every look land. She lifted her phone and took 3 photos in a row. She turned the screen toward me with this huge, proud grin. Look at this, I actually like my face now. I forced a smile and raised my thumb while my chest thumped. If I had left it at the haircut, maybe things calmed down. In the car, she kept rubbing her head and humming some tune. My phone buzzed on the console again and again. Her mother's name filled the screen with 4 missed calls stacked. I flipped it face down and told myself I would call later. Later felt very close and very dangerous. She leaned back and watched herself in the visor mirror. I heard her whisper softly, just testing the new look. You think she will scream or go silent first? Her leg bounced against the door, tapping out some anxious rhythm. I told her I had no idea and that I would stay parked until she waved from the porch. We pulled up in front of her mother's place and the air changed. She unbuckled fast and grabbed her bag like she might bolt. You sure you want to go in alone? If you come in, she will just go at you first. She opened the door and stepped out before I could answer. I stayed in the driver's seat with the engine still running. Through the windshield, I watched her walk up the path. Everything felt sharp. The front door opened and her mother appeared. I could not hear the first words. I did not need them. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth, then to her hips. A second later, her voice carried all the way to my car. What did you do? What is on your head? My kid turned sideways like a shield. I saw her spine straighten. She said something back I could not catch. Her mother got louder. I gripped the steering wheel and thought about walking up there anyway. My cell started ringing on the seat like it wanted out. I glanced at the caller ID and knew the fight had started. I let it ring to voicemail once, then it lit up again. I finally swiped to answer and held my breath. I barely got out hello before she launched into me full force. Are you out of your mind? What have you done to her? Her words hit hard enough that I checked my mirror like I crashed. It is only a cut, and she begged for it. I tried to keep my voice steady and failed. You damaged her on purpose. You wanted to make me look cruel. I opened my mouth to argue and nothing smart came out. She ranted about job prospects in college and how I wreck everything. Each sentence stacked on the last until she shifted to legal terms. I will call my attorney in the morning. You handed me evidence. That word evidence landed worse than any insult. I could feel my grip slipping. My kid glanced back through the doorway and spotted me still parked. Her mother's voice carried over her shoulder while she tried not to cry. She mouthed something like I am okay. I did not buy it. I wanted to step out and end the whole shouting match. Instead, I stayed in the car and took the hits through the phone. She finally slowed down and dropped her voice into that cold tone. You broke her confidence. She will never forget that you did this. You just wanted to be the fun parent, so you chopped her identity off. Hearing fun parent hit hard because she was not completely wrong. I told her that our kid asked for courage, not permission. She gave one sharp laugh and labeled me reckless and selfish. If the school complains, I will make sure the judge hears everything. Then the line went silent and the screen dropped back to black. I sat there with the dial tone still in my ears even though it was gone. Up by the doorway, my daughter and her mother were LL squared off. After a minute, my phone lit up again with a new message. It was from my kid, not from her. She typed, "I love it and I am fine," then nothing else. I stared at that line while her mother's words about evidence echoed. I already knew one text would not protect us from what came next. On Monday, she locked her bedroom door and turned on music. First school day with the shaved head and already a standoff. I knocked once and leaned on the frame like I had patience. "You need to move or we both lose our nerve." Silence stretched long enough that I pictured her texting her mother. The knob turned and she stepped out in a huge sweatshirt. The hood was up, hands buried deep, shoulders tucked inward. Her eyes flicked past me to her backpack and then the floor. "I am not scared, I just do not feel like being a show." The way she said show made me hate my own reflection. At the mirror by the hallway, she hesitated and pushed the hood back. Short hair stuck up in uneven lines and she studied it. "I liked it yesterday, today I feel like I signed a contract." I forced a laugh that sounded wrong even to me. First days always suck, that does not mean it was a mistake. On the drive, she chewed the inside of her cheek nonstop. My phone kept lighting up in the cup holder with new messages. I did not have to read them to know the sender. "Did she text you about me again?" She never said her mother's name when she was bracing for impact. "She has thoughts, she always has thoughts." I tried to shrug it off like a minor thing. None of her texts change what you wanted on your own head. That line sounded brave, but my fingers tightened around the wheel. I knew one email from the school would flip that whole argument. At the drop-off lane, she froze before opening her door. Groups of kids moved in clumps, already locked into routines. "Maybe I keep the hood up till first period." She tugged the fabric forward, then stopped halfway. "No, screw that, they stare either way." She pushed the hood all the way back and sat taller. A couple of kids near the curb turned and did a double take. One boy nudged his friend and whispered something with a crooked smile. She caught it and rolled her eyes, jaw grinding. I watched her step out like she was walking into a test. She glanced back once and lifted her hand in a small wave. I raised mine, pretending this was any regular morning shuffle. Then she disappeared through the doors and the lane kept moving. Driving away felt like leaving her in a ring with no coach. I told myself teenagers survive worse, that leg got old fast. Late morning, she sent a single line while I was at work. "Somebody just patted my head like I am a pet." I stared at it, thumb hovering over reply. That message felt casual on the surface with something sour underneath. I typed that people touch what they do not understand and hit send. She did not respond, not for a long while. I refreshed the thread 3 times, watching my own words sit there. Part of me thought she was busy, actually having a decent day. Another part pictured her in a bathroom stall crying. I went with the version that hurt less and got back to my tasks. Early afternoon, an unknown number popped up and I answered on instinct. A staff member introduced themselves quickly, voice stiff and polite. They mentioned an incident by the lockers and my stomach lurched. Nothing physical, but some students made a recording that spread quickly. That phrase, "recording that spread," made my head pound. They described kids following her down the hallway with their phones raised. One girl filmed the back of her head while laughing loudly. My daughter walked faster and tried to ignore them, that was their story. Another parent has already contacted us about concerns. I did not need a name to know which parent moved first. The staff member assured me they would address the behavior on campus. Then they asked if I had considered how dramatic image changes affect peers. I bit down on my tongue so I did not snap. It felt like a warning dressed up as friendly guidance. They ended with a line about looping in administration and left it hanging. By pickup time, my chest felt tight and my head buzzed. She climbed into the passenger seat slowly, no usual quick drop of her bag. Her hood was down, but her eyes looked drained. "How bad was it?" I asked before we pulled away. She unlocked her phone without speaking and handed it over. On the screen, a short clip played on repeat. The camera followed her from behind while kids pointed and giggled. Someone zoomed in on her scalp and added a stupid caption. The comment section was already stacked with laughing emojis and weak jokes. I watched it twice, then a third time because I did not want to blink. I reported it, but it is still all over. She rubbed her head once, then dropped her hand fast. Some people told them to knock it off, but everyone saw in. Iway. Her voice was flat, which bothered me more than yelling. Flat meant the hurt already started to settle in deeply. At home, she went straight to the couch and pulled out homework. That was her move when she wanted to look unbothered. I opened my email and saw a new message from the principal. It used phrases like learning environment and unintended consequences. Each line felt like it leaned toward my decision without saying my name. At the bottom, there was a separate email from my ex. She had forwarded the school note with a bright subject line. Under it, she wrote that this is exactly what she predicted. She claimed my impulsive agreement created a target on our kid's back. She ended with, "The court will see this pattern very clearly." Reading that last sentence, my throat went dry. She was no longer just angry, she was documenting. I glanced over at my daughter, pretending to focus on assignments. She watched the television, but her eyes kept drifting to her phone. Every vibration made her shoulders twitch like another hit landed. "Is the school mad at me or you?" She asked it without looking up, pencil tapping on the page. "The school is annoyed that kids act like the internet owns them." That was my first answer, the one meant to calm her. A slower, uglier answer sat in my chest and stayed there. She eased the pencil down and stared at me finally. "If this blows up, they will blame you before they blame me." There was no judgment in that sentence, just tired honesty. That hurt more than all her mother's shouting combined. She had already accepted that adults turn on each other when scared. I told her we would handle the video, the gossip, all of it. I promised I would talk to the school and not let them spin the story. Inside, I knew my ex had already spun her version 3 times over. At that point, I still thought we were dealing with a rough week. I had no clue this email chain was the opening move of a legal fight. The envelope landed on my kitchen table with a hard smack. Thick paper, sharp edges, my name printed in neat dark letters. I knew what it was before I tore the top open. By the second line, my hands were damp and leaving marks. There it was, motion to change custody, hearing date circled. I heard her key in the front door while I kept reading. I slid the papers into a stack, but not fast enough. She dropped her backpack and saw my face before the folder. "What happened? You look like someone died." I handed her the first page because lying felt pointless. She read slower than I did, lips moving a little. Her eyes hit the part about decision-making and school difficulties. "So she is trying to take me away over hair." Her voice went weirdly calm, which scared me more. "You told me this was our choice, now it is a weapon." I wanted to say it would all blow over soon. The words stuck because clearly it had not blown anywhere. Instead, I told her a lawyer would help us answer this. She picked up the envelope, turned it, then dropped it again. "Do not let them talk about me like I am a project." 2 days later, I sat across from an attorney with tired eyes. He laid out printed copies of the principal email and screenshots. The video clip played on mute on his laptop between us. He paused it on the frame where she sped up to escape. "Your ex will argue this shows poor judgment and emotional risk." I flinched at the phrase poor judgment because it was not wrong. The attorney tapped the page where the school mentioned disruption. "We lean into autonomy and support, not impulse." Hearing him say autonomy like a textbook term made my skin crawl. I had not thought in vocabulary words when I signed that consent form. "Do you regret letting her cut it off?" he asked eventually. I stared at the frozen image of my kid walking away. Regret sat in my throat and pride sat right beside it. "I regret the fallout, not her feeling like herself for once." He nodded slowly, then underlined a sentence and told me to keep it. The night before court, she sat at the counter with her laptop. The hair had grown into a soft layer, no longer pure scalp. She ran her fingertips over it while scrolling through messages. "You know I want to talk in there, not just sit." Her stare left no room for me to dodge it. "It is intimidating, they use words to make you feel small." I rubbed my temples while she watched, waiting for an excuse. "I do not care if they stare, they already do that anyway." She closed the laptop with a solid click that made me jump. If adults decide everything without me again, I am walking out. I should have insisted she stay outside the courtroom and safe. Part of me knew this would carve something permanent in her memory. Another part was selfish and wanted her voice on record. I hated that part and still listened to it. I told her I would let her speak if the judge invited it. Morning traffic crawled the day of the hearing. My chest buzzing. She sat in the passenger seat tracing the edge of the notice. Do I need to call him Your Honor or something else? You can call him Your Honor, then answer straight, nothing extra. I sounded confident, but my hands kept slipping on the steering wheel. In the courthouse hallway, my ex stood already flanked by her lawyer. She looked straight through me like I was a chair in the way. Her gaze dropped to our kid's head, then flicked back up hard. So this is the famous look you were ready to lose custody over. My kid shifted closer to me until our shoulders touched. Her attorney greeted mine with polite stiffness that did nothing to help. They stepped aside to talk while we sat on a bench. My daughter swung her foot slowly, heel hitting metal in rhythm. You can still back out of this fight, you know that. She snorted once and leaned forward with her elbows on her knees. I am not the one dragging us here over a haircut. Her eyes stayed on the double doors like a challenge. If she wins this, next time it will be about clothes. There was no drama in her tone, just experience. I realized she was already planning for the next battle. When our case number was called, my mouth went dry instantly. We walked in and everything felt too bright and too quiet. The judge flipped through a thin folder, then looked up at us. My ex took the first chance to speak when they gave it. She started with the school email like she had rehearsed it nightly. She talked about increased anxiety and distraction and constant online chatter. Her voice shook just enough to sound fragile but still composed. She went from shy and steady to agitated and withdrawn overnight. She gestured toward our kid without turning her whole body. All because he wanted to be the cool parent who lets anything happen. I wanted to interrupt at the phrase cool parent, but I waited. Their lawyer lined up the printed screenshots in front of the judge. He described the video as humiliating and widely shared among students. Then he slid the consent form photocopy across the table toward the bench. This signature shows a reckless disregard for foreseeable social harm. That line felt like a punch aimed right at my chest. I watched the judge's eyes track the line where my name rested. He asked my ex if there had been any physical risk or injury. She answered no, but stressed the emotional damage and loss of stability. The phrase loss of stability clung to the air between us. Then it was my turn, and every word felt heavy. I agreed after she asked clearly and repeatedly for that change. I made myself look at the judge, not at my ex. I underestimated how cruel other kids would be about a haircut. Saying it aloud felt like cracking a shell around my ego. I also told him I had spoken with staff after the video surfaced. That we were dealing with bullying, not a medical emergency. I admitted I should have looped her mother in instead of going solo. I heard my ex huff at that, but I kept my eyes forward. I was trying to back my kid up, not start a war. The judge turned to my daughter and studied her for a moment. Do you want to speak for yourself at all? She stood before I could nod, knees brushing the table. Her voice wavered once on the first word, then leveled out. I asked for this, he did not force me, he listened. She told them she had wanted the cut for months before that day. That her mother refused even to discuss it without ending the conversation. She admitted kids teased her and followed her with phones. I feel embarrassed sometimes, but I still like how I look. She ended by saying she needed choices, not protection from her own reflection. The judge leaned back and exhaled slowly through his nose. For a second nobody moved, even the attorneys seemed to freeze. Then he closed the folder and spoke in a tone that carried. This is not about hair, this is about how you two fight. My neck prickled because he was not wrong there either. He denied the request for immediate custody changes right then. No extra weekends taken, no new schedule stamped that morning. Instead, he ordered co-parenting counseling and follow-up reports. He looked at me and warned against more unilateral decisions that spark chaos. Next time I may not be this patient if there is another crisis. Walking out of that room felt nothing like victory, just delay. My ex brushed by close enough that I caught her whisper. You dodged it today, enjoy every minute until the next screw-up. My daughter grabbed my wrist and tugged me toward the exit doors. Her grip was strong, but I could feel the tremor in her fingers. My phone vibrated again on the counter. Across the room, she rubbed little circles on her scalp. Another long message from my ex filled the screen. "You still happy with what you did? Congratulations." I locked the phone and watched my kid laugh at something online. Her hair had grown into this soft, uneven layer. Not long, not bare, just this in-between stage. She kept dragging her fingers through it like a nervous habit. Sometimes she spiked it up, sometimes she flattened it down. Every version still reminded me of that first buzzed path. "I kind of like the awkward length," she said one afternoon. She stood in the hallway mirror, turning her head slowly. "You know, it is almost like a permanent hat." Her mouth twitched upward, but her eyes stayed careful. I could tell she was still waiting for the next hit. The school called a family meeting about social media. I knew exactly which clip they meant before they explained. We sat in a small office, principal across the desk. My daughter stared at the floor, my ex stared at me. They described ongoing online chatter like it was a weather report. They pulled up a different video, one I had not seen. This time, another student stood in front of my kid. He blocked her path and mimed shaving his own head. Two girls giggled behind the camera and zoomed in close. My daughter shoved past him without touching anyone, jaw locked tight. The principal talked about discipline plans and stricter phone rules. Then he slid a printed report toward us, heavy with notes. He said they wanted to support her expression without fueling disruption. My ex jumped on that line and nodded way too fast. I sat there wondering which part of that sentence meant me. Walking out, my ex caught my arm hard near the door. "Do you get it now, or do you need more examples?" Her smile was tight, almost polite, which worried me. "This is the part where normal parents course correct, Ryan." I pulled my elbow free and tried not to react. Bullying is not fixed by forcing her hair longer. I kept my voice low. She stepped closer anyway. "You keep twisting this into some freedom story about you." She jabbed her finger toward our daughter waiting down the hall. "She is the one absorbing the fallout while you experiment." That word experiment stuck in my head the entire drive home. I hated it, mostly because it was not entirely false. When you are the permissive parent, it feels heroic sometimes. Then the results show up at school and in court. You realize you treated real life like a test run. Co-parenting counseling started the next week in a bland office. The therapist asked us to list our top fears out loud. My ex went first and did not hesitate at all. She worried our kid would spiral and lose direction completely. She worried I would keep choosing chaos over structure every time. When it was my turn, I stalled a second. I said I was scared of repeating my own childhood. Of raising a girl who never felt like her choices mattered. I heard my voice shake when I mentioned the barbershop. The counselor watched both of us and wrote something down slowly. Later that same night, my daughter sat cross-legged on my couch. She had a sketchbook open, doodling shapes around her initials. "Can I ask a question that you will probably hate?" She kept drawing when she said it, which meant serious. "What if I cut the sides shorter again, like a pattern?" My stomach clenched instantly, like some reflex kicking up. Not because of the look, but because of the fallout. For a second, I actually pictured another envelope on my table. "I am not saying never," I answered after a beat. "I am saying not until we are on the same page." She paused the pencil and looked straight at me. "Whose page, yours and hers, or you and me?" That is the problem right there, right? Any answer makes somebody feel outvoted or betrayed. I took a breath and tried not to dodge it. "We talk about it as three people next time." The words felt clumsy, but I pushed them out. "I will not sign anything new without everyone in the room." Her face shifted between annoyed and relieved in 1 second. "Fine, but I am not letting anybody call it crazy again." A few weeks passed and the school noise slowly cooled down. The original video sank under newer dramas and stupid trends. She still got looks, but fewer phones came out. She found 2 kids who thought her cut was just interesting. They started sitting together at lunch, trading earbuds and jokes. One afternoon, she bounced into the car with a half smile. "So there is this girl who shaved her head last weekend." I braced immediately, but she kept going before I spoke. "Her parents are mad too, but at least now I am not alone." There was a spark there I had not seen in months. Did anyone mess with her like they did to you? I checked her face in the mirror while we waited in traffic. Some guys tried, I shut it down. She popped her gum and stared out the window again. I just told them it was boring now, like old news. That was the first time I felt proud without guilt attached. Not because of the hair, but because of the way she handled it. She was still figuring herself out, obviously, I mean she is a teenager. But there was this new steel in her voice I had not heard. I also knew my ex would never give the haircut any credit. At the next counseling session, my ex brought printed articles. They had scary headlines about teenage mental health and risky expression. She spread them out on the table between us like proof. This is what I mean, there are trends that wreck kids. She tapped one paragraph so hard the paper crinkled. I could have rolled my eyes, I almost did. Instead, I talked about that other girl at school. About how our kid stood up for her without starting a fight. She is not spiraling, she is adapting, I said carefully. I am not saying everything I did was smart, I am saying she is stronger than we keep assuming. That last part came out harsher than planned and hung there. My ex swallowed hard and stared at the shelf behind the therapist. For a second, I saw something like doubt in her expression. Then she shook it off and went back to the articles. We stayed stuck between fear and control, no clean resolution. At home that night, my daughter sprawled across the floor with assignments. Her hair stuck up in odd directions where she had pulled it. Did you three solve the world's problems without me? She asked. She shaded in some geometry diagram while waiting for an answer. Not even close, I said, dropping onto the couch. She studied me for a moment, then went back to her work. You know, I never asked you to fight over me. She kept her eyes on the paper while she spoke. I just wanted you to not ignore me when I said I felt wrong. That word wrong lodged in my chest like a stone. I heard you that day, I told her slowly. Maybe I heard you and also heard my younger self too loud. I rubbed my jaw, trying to get the words right. I pushed faster than I should have because I wanted to be different from my own folks. Saying it out loud felt like turning a mirror on myself. She sat back and stretched, then leaned her head against the couch. You messed up some timing, but you did not ruin me. She said it so casual my throat tightened. You freaked out less than most grown-ups would, even if it cost you. Her voice softened when she added, you trusted me with something big. Here's the part where I thought I might cry. Not from relief only, but from the weight of that trust. Having a kid believe you meant well does not erase harm. It just gives you a chance to do better next time. I promised myself right then I would slow down before the next big ask. Now when she passes a mirror, she sometimes pauses and smiles. Not every time, some days are still rough and tense. She jokes about growing it out just to shave it again later. She experiments with little clips, headbands, whatever she feels like. It is no longer about shocking anyone, it is about seeing herself. Her mother still tells relatives that I wrecked everything for attention. I know because one of them forwarded me a group message. In it, my ex wrote that she was managing the damage alone. I stared at that line until my screen went dark. Part of me wanted to reply, part of me just sat there. Tonight the house is quiet except for the dishwasher humming. My daughter knocked out early after a long school event. On her nightstand her phone lights up then goes still again. I can see the faint fuzz of her hair from the doorway. She sleeps facing the wall, shoulders finally loose instead of curled. I sit at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Old photos are pulled up, the long hair versions. I flip between them and the shot from the barbershop chair. In that one her smile is wide and fearless and a little scared. Mine is behind her, already bracing for a fight I thought I understood. I will be honest, I do not know if I did the right thing. I know I tried to hear her when another adult would have shut her down. I know I underestimated how cruel people can be when something looks different. I know I let my own baggage steer me more than I admitted back then. So I opened this site, started typing, and asked strangers if I really wrecked my kid or simply stood next to her while she stepped into herself.